The stagecoach lurched violently to one side, throwing Anna Harrington against the wooden interior with enough force to bruise her shoulder, and she knew with absolute certainty that this journey west had been a terrible mistake. Snow fell in thick curtains outside the windows, transforming the Wyoming landscape into an endless white void that seemed determined to swallow everything in its path. Anna pressed her gloved hand against the cold glass, watching as the wind whipped the flakes into frenzied spirals that obscured even the horses struggling to pull the coach forward. She had left Boston 3 weeks ago, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride placement with a merchant in Evanston, Wyoming. The letter had promised a comfortable home, a respectable husband, and a fresh start far from the scandal that had driven her from Massachusetts. What it had not mentioned was the possibility of dying in a blizzard before she ever reached her destination. The driver shouted something unintelligible over the howling wind, and the stagecoach jerked to a sudden stop. Anna grabbed the leather strap hanging from the ceiling to steady herself as the door flew open, admitting a blast of frigid air and snow that stung her face like frozen needles. "Cannot go any further, miss," the driver called down, his weathered face barely visible beneath layers of ice that had formed on his beard and eyebrows. "Storm is too fierce. There is an old trapper's cabin about a quarter-mile east. You will have to shelter there until it passes." A quarter-mile. Anna's voice rose in disbelief. "In this weather, I will freeze before I make it 20 yards. You will freeze for certain if you stay in this coach," the driver said grimly. "I have to get these horses to lower ground or they will die. The cabin has a fireplace and should have some wood. It is your only chance." Before Anna could protest further, her trunk was being hauled down from the top of the coach. The driver's assistant, a young man who could not have been more than 19, helped her down the step. The moment her boots hit the snow-covered ground, the wind nearly knocked her over. It tore at her traveling cloak, finding every gap in the fabric to assault her with icy fingers. "That way," the driver pointed toward a line of trees barely visible through the white curtain. "Follow the tree line east. You cannot miss it." Then they were gone, the stagecoach disappearing into the storm so quickly that Anna wondered if she had imagined the entire conversation. She stood alone in the wilderness, snow already accumulating on her shoulders and hat, with nothing but a heavy trunk and increasingly numb fingers. Moving felt impossible. The cold had already seeped through her layers of clothing, making her limbs feel stiff and uncooperative. But standing still meant certain death, so Anna grabbed the leather handle of her trunk and began dragging it through the snow. Each step required tremendous effort as her skirts tangled around her legs, and the wind pushed against her like a physical barrier determined to drive her back. The tree line seemed to grow no closer no matter how many steps she took. Snow filled her eyes and mouth whenever she tried to look up. Her hands lost all feeling within minutes, and she could no longer tell if she was still gripping the trunk handle or if her frozen fingers had simply locked into position. The cold became everything, an all-consuming presence that made thinking about anything else impossible. Time lost all meaning. Anna fell twice, her skirts and petticoats soaking up snow that would freeze into solid masses of fabric. Each time, the temptation to simply lie down and rest nearly overwhelmed her survival instinct. Only the knowledge that rest meant death forced her back to her feet. When she finally stumbled against the wooden wall of a structure, she almost did not recognize it as her salvation. Her mind had grown as sluggish as her body, and it took several long moments before she understood that she had found the cabin. Finding the door required feeling her way along the wall, her numb hands barely registering the rough texture of the logs. The door opened with difficulty. snow having piled against it on the inside where it had blown through gaps in the wood. Anna fell through the entrance more than walked, landing on her hands and knees on a dirt floor. Using the last of her strength, she turned and shoved the door closed against the wind, then collapsed against it, her chest heaving as she tried to draw breath into lungs that burned from the cold air. The cabin was barely warmer than the outside, but the absence of wind felt like a blessing. Anna lay on the floor for what might have been minutes or hours, waiting for her body to remember how to function. Eventually, she managed to pull herself into a sitting position and assess her surroundings. The cabin was small, perhaps 12 feet on each side, with a stone fireplace along one wall and a rough wooden bunk in the corner. A table and single chair occupied the center of the room, and she could see various supplies stacked against the far wall, though the dimness made it difficult to identify them specifically. Most importantly, there was indeed a stack of firewood beside the hearth. Getting a fire started with frozen hands proved nearly impossible. Anna had to tuck her fingers under her arms, close to her body, and wait for feeling to return before she could grip anything effectively. The process was agonizing, as returning sensation brought waves of pain that made her gasp and bite her lip to keep from crying out. When she could finally move her fingers again, they were clumsy and uncooperative, but she managed to arrange kindling in the fireplace and strike a match from the tin she found on the mantel. The first tiny flame guttered and died. The second lasted longer but failed to catch. On the third attempt, the kindling finally ignited, and Anna watched with desperate intensity as the flames slowly spread, terrified that they would go out before catching the larger pieces of wood. When the fire finally established itself and began to crackle steadily, she felt tears of relief freeze on her cheeks. She dragged her trunk close to the fire and changed out of her wet traveling clothes, her fingers still so numb and clumsy that the buttons seemed like instruments of torture. She had packed sensibly, at least, with warm wool dresses suitable for Wyoming winters. Once she had dressed in dry clothes and wrapped herself in every shawl and blanket she could find in her trunk, she began to feel almost human again. The storm showed no signs of abating. Through the cracks in the walls and around the door, she could hear the wind screaming like something alive and angry. Snow continued to blow in through every gap, creating small drifts along the walls. Anna fed the fire steadily, grateful that whoever used this cabin had left a generous supply of wood. As the hours passed and darkness fell, Anna took stock of the supplies in the cabin. There were several cans of beans, some coffee, a bag of cornmeal that had gone slightly moldy, and a tin of hardtack that looked like it might have survived from the previous decade. It was not appetizing, but it would keep her alive. There was also a barrel in the corner that she discovered contained snow that had blown in, which she could melt for water. The first night was the worst. Despite the fire, cold seeped through the walls and up through the floor. Anna piled everything she could find onto the bunk, creating layers of blankets, her traveling cloak, and even some empty burlap sacks she found in the corner. She lay awake for hours, listening to the storm and wondering if anyone would even think to look for her when she failed to arrive in Evanston as scheduled. The man she was supposed to marry, Ezra Whitfield, knew only that she would arrive sometime in late November. They had exchanged exactly 3 letters, all formal and focused on practical matters. He had seemed decent enough on paper, a widower of 42 who owned a dry goods store and needed a wife to help manage his household and his 2 young daughters. Anna had not expected love, but she had hoped for kindness and mutual respect. Now she wondered if she would ever meet him at all. By the second day, The storm had not diminished in the slightest. Anna established a routine to keep from going mad with boredom and worry. She maintained the fire, melted snow for water, ate small amounts of the cabin's meager supplies, and tried to keep her mind occupied. She had brought 3 books in her trunk, which she rationed carefully, reading only a few pages at a time to make them last. The isolation was profound. Anna had never experienced such complete solitude. Even in her darkest hours in Boston, after her father's death and the revelation of his debts that had destroyed her family's reputation, she had been surrounded by people. Judgmental people, perhaps, but people nonetheless. Here, there was only the wind and the snow and the crackling fire. On the 3rd day, Anna began to worry about the firewood. She was using it sparingly, letting the fire burn low during the day and building it up only at night when the cold became unbearable, but the stack was noticeably smaller. If the storm lasted more than another few days, she would run out. The thought of freezing to death in this tiny cabin, so close to the warmth and safety of Amidst, was almost unbearable. She tried to remain optimistic. Surely the storm would pass soon. Surely someone would come looking for her once the weather cleared. The stagecoach driver knew roughly where she was, but doubt crept in during the long, dark hours. What if the driver had not survived the storm himself? What if no one thought to look for a cabin so far from the main road? What if she simply disappeared? Another casualty of the harsh western wilderness. Meanwhile, in Amidst, Benjamin Quincy stood in the general store, arguing with the stagecoach company manager about a missing passenger. The driver said he left her at the old Morrison cabin, the manager repeated, looking harried. That was 3 days ago, right when the storm hit. There is nothing anyone can do until the weather clears. 3 days, Benjamin said flatly. She has been alone in that cabin for 3 days with no supplies and no way to signal for help. The cabin has firewood, the manager said defensively, and some provisions. She will be fine once the storm passes. Benjamin looked out the window at the snow still falling steadily, though with less fury than the previous days. The storm is breaking. I am going after her. That is suicide, the manager protested. The drifts are 10 feet high in places. You will never make it through. I have a horse trained for winter conditions and enough experience in these mountains to know what I am doing, Benjamin said. What I do not have is the willingness to let a woman die of cold or starvation because everyone else is too comfortable to make the effort. You do not even know her, the manager said, shaking his head. I know she is a human being who needs help, Benjamin replied. That is enough. He left the store before the manager could raise any more objections. The truth was more complicated than he had let on. Benjamin did know about the missing bride, though he had never met her. Ezra Whitfield was his neighbor, and the older man had been fretting about his mail-order bride's delayed arrival for days. When the storm had hit, and the stagecoach had returned to town without her, Ezra had been beside himself with worry, but his responsibilities to his 2 young daughters kept him from mounting a rescue himself. Benjamin had volunteered. Partly out of neighborly duty, partly because he knew the country better than most, and partly because the idea of someone suffering alone in the wilderness gnawed at him in a way he could not ignore. He had lost people to the harsh Wyoming winters before. His younger brother had died in a blizzard 8 years ago, and the guilt of not having been there to help still haunted him. His ranch was small, just enough cattle and horses to make a living, but he had built it with his own hands after coming west from Missouri at the age of 19. Now 27, he knew every inch of the land between Amidst and the mountains, including the location of every line cabin and shelter that dotted the wilderness. The Morrison cabin was roughly 15 miles northeast of town, in rough country, even in good weather. In the aftermath of a 3-day blizzard, it would be treacherous. But Benjamin had a powerful gelding named Rust, part draft horse and part Mustang, with the strength to break through deep snow and the intelligence to find safe footing. He spent the afternoon preparing for the journey, packing supplies that might be needed. Extra blankets, food, medical supplies, and a bottle of whiskey for medicinal purposes. He strapped snowshoes to his saddle in case he needed to proceed on foot, and made sure his rifle was loaded and accessible. The wilderness held dangers beyond just the weather. The sun was setting when he finally rode out, which was not ideal timing but could not be helped. He had a full moon rising, which would provide enough light to travel by once the clouds cleared. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind still blew fiercely, creating swirling clouds of powder that stung his eyes and made visibility difficult. Rust proved his worth immediately, plowing through drifts that would have stopped a smaller horse. Benjamin let the gelding find his own pace, trusting the animal's instincts about safe footing beneath the snow. They made slow but steady progress, following landmarks that Benjamin knew well even under layers of white. The night was brutally cold. Benjamin's face grew numb despite the wool scarf wrapped around his lower face, and ice formed on his eyebrows and the exposed skin around his eyes. He stopped periodically to check on Rust, making sure ice was not building up in the horse's hooves or on his legs. Each stop meant dismounting into snow that sometimes reached his thighs, then struggling to pull himself back into the saddle with muscles growing stiff from cold. Hours passed in a blur of white landscape and darkness. The moon rose higher, casting the snow in shades of silver and blue, beautiful in a harsh and unforgiving way. Benjamin had learned long ago that the western wilderness was like that, breathtaking and deadly in equal measure. He reached the Morrison cabin 3 hours before dawn, guided by the faint glow of firelight visible through the cracks in the walls. Relief flooded through him, sharp enough to make his eyes sting. The fire meant she was alive. He had made it in time. Anna jerked awake at the sound of a horse's whinny outside the cabin. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, that isolation and cold had finally driven her to hallucinations. Then she heard it again, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots crunching through snow. Fear shot through her. She sat up on the bunk, her heart pounding. Who would be out in this weather? The possibilities that came to mind were not comforting. Outlaws, perhaps, seeking shelter, or someone equally desperate and possibly dangerous. Then a voice called out, rough from cold but strong and distinctly human. "Anyone inside? My name is Benjamin Quincy. I am from Evanston. I came to help." Anna scrambled off the bunk, her legs unsteady from days of inactivity and poor nutrition. She crossed to the door but hesitated with her hand on the latch. "How do I know you are who you say you are?" "You do not," the voice admitted. "But I know you are Anna Harrington, expected in Evanston 3 days ago. Ezra Whitfield has been worried sick about you. The stagecoach driver reported leaving you here, so I rode out to bring you back." Anna's hands shook as she lifted the latch and pulled the door open. A man stood in the snow, tall and broad-shouldered, his face mostly hidden behind layers of scarves and a hat pulled low. Behind him, a massive horse stood patiently, snow clinging to its dark coat. "You rode through the storm to find me?" Anna asked, her voice cracking with emotion she could not contain. "The storm has mostly passed," Benjamin said, though they both knew that was only partially true. "May I come in? My horse needs rest, and I need to make sure you are unharmed." Anna stepped back, allowing him to enter. He had to duck slightly to clear the door frame, and when he straightened inside the cabin, she realized just how tall he was. He began unwrapping the scarves from his face, revealing strong features reddened from cold, a straight nose and dark eyes that assessed her with concern. "You look half frozen," he said bluntly. "When did you last eat something hot?" "I have not been able to cook anything," Anna admitted. "The supplies here are all cold foods. I have been eating hardtack and canned beans." Benjamin shook his head and immediately set about organizing. He went back outside to tend to his horse, bringing the animal around to the lee side of the cabin, where a crude shelter provided minimal protection from the wind. Anna watched through the open door as he rubbed the horse down with handfuls of snow, then covered him with a thick blanket from his saddle bags. When he came back inside carrying his supplies, he got to work immediately building up the fire and setting a pot of snow to melt. From his packs he produced coffee, bacon, and actual bread that was only slightly frozen. "We will eat, rest for a few hours, and then head back to Evanston," he said. "The way should be easier in daylight." Anna sank down onto the chair, watching him work with efficient, practiced movements. "I do not know how to thank you. I thought I might die here." "You would have survived," Benjamin said, though his tone suggested he was not entirely certain. "You kept the fire going and rationed your supplies. Those were the right instincts." "I was running out of firewood," Anna confessed. "Another 2 days and I would have been in serious trouble." Benjamin glanced at the depleted woodpile and nodded grimly. "You are safe now. That is what matters." As the coffee began to heat and the bacon started to sizzle in the pan he had brought, the cabin filled with smells that made Anna's mouth water. She had not realized how hungry she was until that moment. When he handed her a tin cup of hot coffee, she wrapped both hands around it and felt warmth seep into her palms for the first time in days. They ate in silence at first, Anna too overwhelmed to make conversation and Benjamin too focused on the practical matters of melting enough snow for drinking water and ensuring the fire would last through their rest period. But as the warmth of the food and fire began to restore her energy, Anna found herself studying her rescuer more closely. He was younger than she had initially thought, probably not much older than her own 23 years. His hands were work-roughened, the hands of someone who labored outdoors for his living. He moved with a quiet confidence that suggested competence and self-reliance. And despite the harsh circumstances, he had been unfailingly courteous, never once making her feel like a burden or an inconvenience. "You said you came from Evanston," Anna said finally. "Do you know Ezra Whitfield?" "He is my neighbor," Benjamin confirmed. "His property adjoins mine to the south. He has been worried about you ever since the stagecoach returned without you." Anna tried to feel something about that news, but all she could muster was a vague sense of obligation. Ezra Whitfield was still just a name to her, a man she had agreed to marry out of necessity rather than any deeper feeling. Now, looking at the man who had actually ridden through dangerous conditions to ensure her safety, she felt a confusing mix of gratitude and something else she could not quite identify. "What do you do?" she asked, searching for safe conversation. "You mentioned property, so I assume you are a rancher." "Small operation," Benjamin said. "Cattle and horses, mostly. I break and train horses for buyers in Evanston and Rock Springs and run enough cattle to keep the ranch solvent. It is a living." "Do you have family?" Anna asked, then immediately felt her face heat. "I apologize, that was too personal a question." "It is fine," Benjamin said, though something sad flickered across his face. "No family here. My parents and sister are still in Missouri. I had a younger brother who came west with me, but he died in a blizzard 8 years back, wandered away from camp in a storm, and we did not find him until spring." "I am so sorry," Anna said softly. understanding now why he had been willing to make such a dangerous journey for a stranger. "It is why I know these mountains so well now," Benjamin said. "I learned every shelter and landmark within 50 miles of Evanston, just in case. Did not help my brother, but maybe it helps someone else." They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence now, the kind that forms between people who have shared something significant. Anna found herself feeling more at ease with this man she had just met than she had with anyone in months, perhaps years. Eventually, Benjamin insisted she take the bunk while he would rest sitting up in the chair. Anna protested, but he was immovable on the point. "You have been through an ordeal," he said firmly. "You need proper rest. I have slept in saddles and on cold ground more times than I can count. A few hours in a chair is luxury." Too exhausted to argue further, Anna lay down on the bunk and pulled the blankets over herself. She expected to lie awake, too aware of the stranger's presence to relax, but the warmth of the fire and the relief of no longer being alone pulled her under almost immediately. She woke to daylight filtering through the cracks in the walls and the smell of more coffee brewing. Benjamin was already up, repacking his supplies and preparing for the journey. "How long did I sleep?" Anna asked, sitting up and pushing her hair back from her face. "About 4 hours," Benjamin said. "Sun has been up for an hour. We should head out soon if you are feeling up to it." The sky is clear now, but weather can change fast in these mountains. Anna stood and straightened her dress, suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. She had not looked in a mirror in days and could only imagine what a sight she must be. But Benjamin did not seem to notice or care. His attention focused on practical matters. They ate a quick breakfast of the remaining bread and some dried beef from Benjamin's supplies. Then Anna repacked her trunk, while he brought Rust around to the front of the cabin. The morning was clear and brutally cold, the sky such a deep blue it almost hurt to look at. The landscape had been transformed by the storm, every familiar shape buried under snow that sparkled in the sunlight. "Rust cannot carry us both plus the trunk," Benjamin said, studying the load. "I can tie the trunk on, but you will have to ride and I will walk alongside, at least until we get to flatter ground." "I should walk," Anna protested. "You came all this way to rescue me. I cannot let you walk while I ride." "You have been surviving on hardtack and cold beans for 3 days," Benjamin said flatly. "I ate a full meal before I left town yesterday. You ride." Before she could argue further, he lifted her trunk and secured it behind the saddle with efficient movements, then turned and held out his hands to help her mount. His grip was strong and steady as he lifted her up, and Anna settled onto the saddle, acutely aware of the warmth from his hands that lingered even through her gloves. The journey back was slow and challenging. The drifts were deep enough in places that even Rust struggled, and Benjamin had to break trail on foot through the worst sections. Anna watched him work, saw the strain in his shoulders and the determined set of his jaw, and felt a growing sense of awe at his strength and endurance. They stopped periodically to rest Rust and to give Benjamin a chance to catch his breath. During one of these stops, as they stood in the shelter of a rock outcropping eating dried beef, Anna finally voiced the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you really come?" she asked. "Not just because Ezra was worried. You do not know me. You risked your life for a complete stranger." Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. "My brother died because no one went looking for him soon enough. We thought he would find his way back. That's someone who knew the country as well as he did, would not need help. By the time we realized he was in real trouble, the storm had been going for 2 days and the trail was impossible. We found him 3 months later when the snow melted." He turned to look at her then, and the pain in his eyes made Anna's throat tight. I will not make that mistake again. If someone needs help and I can provide it, I go. Simple as that. It is not simple, Anna said quietly. It is extraordinary. Benjamin looked uncomfortable with the praise and changed the subject, asking her about Boston and what had brought her west. Anna found herself telling him the truth, something she had not planned to share with anyone in Wyoming. Her father had been a banker, respected and wealthy, until it was discovered after his death that he had been embezzling from his own bank to cover gambling debts. The scandal had destroyed everything. Anna and her mother had lost their home, their social standing, and any hope of a respectable future in Boston. Her mother had gone to live with a disapproving sister in Philadelphia, and Anna had decided to start completely fresh in the West, where no one knew her family's shame. "So you agreed to marry a stranger to escape your past," Benjamin said, and there was no judgment in his voice, only understanding. "I agreed to marry a stranger to build a future," Anna corrected. "I do not want to spend my life defined by my father's mistakes." "That is fair," Benjamin said. "Though for what it is worth, I think you are brave. Most people would not have the courage to start over so completely." His words warmed her more than the coffee had. They resumed their journey, and as the hours passed, Anna found herself talking more freely than she had in years. Benjamin was easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions and listening with genuine interest. He told her about his ranch, about the challenges of surviving Wyoming winters and dry summers, about his dreams of expanding his horse breeding operation. The sun was setting when the buildings of Amidst finally came into view in the distance. Anna should have felt relief, excitement about finally reaching her destination. Instead, she felt a strange sense of loss, as if something important was ending before it had really begun. They reached the edge of town as darkness fell, and people came out of their homes to watch their arrival. Word had apparently spread about the rescue attempt, and Benjamin's return with the missing bride was greeted with calls of congratulation and relief. Ezra Whitfield was waiting at the boarding house where Anna was to have stayed upon her arrival. He was exactly as she had pictured him from his letters. A solid, respectable-looking man in his 40s, with thinning brown hair and a face that spoke of quiet reliability. He rushed forward as Benjamin helped Anna down from Rust. "Miss Harrington, thank God you are safe," Ezra said, reaching for her hands. "I have been beside myself with worry. When the stage returned without you, I feared the worst." "I am unharmed, thanks to Mr. Quincy," Anna said, her hands remaining stiff in Ezra's grasp. She turned to look at Benjamin, who was untying her trunk from his horse. "He rode through the storm to find me. Ben is a good man," Ezra said warmly, "the best neighbor a man could ask for." "I am in his debt." Benjamin set the trunk down and straightened, his expression carefully neutral. "No debt," he said. "I am glad I could help. Miss Harrington is a remarkable woman. She kept herself alive in difficult circumstances." His eyes met Anna's for a moment, and something passed between them that made her heart beat faster. Then he was turning away, leading Rust toward the livery stable without looking back. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Anna settled into the boarding house, met Ezra's daughters, Sarah and Emma, who were 8 and 6 respectively and adorable but shy around their potential new mother. Ezra was attentive and kind, showing her around Amidst and introducing her to the townspeople. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should, exactly as Anna had hoped when she had answered the mail-order bride advertisement. So why did she feel like she was making a terrible mistake? The answer rode past on a dark horse every few days when Benjamin came to town for supplies. Anna would catch glimpses of him from the boarding house window or from Ezra's store, and each time her heart would do something complicated in her chest that she did not want to examine too closely. She was being ridiculous. Benjamin had rescued her, that was all. The intensity of their time together in the cabin had created a false sense of intimacy. What she was feeling was gratitude, not anything deeper. She repeated this to herself like a mantra, trying to believe it. 2 weeks after her arrival, Ezra formally proposed. They were sitting in his parlor, his daughters asleep upstairs, and he presented her with a simple gold band that had belonged to his first wife. "I know this is not a conventional courtship," Ezra said earnestly, "but I have come to care for you deeply, Anna. You are kind to my daughters, you share my values, and I believe we could build a good life together. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Anna looked at the ring, at Ezra's hopeful face, and felt panic rise in her throat. This was what she had come west for. This was the future she had chosen. Ezra was a good man who would provide stability and security. What more could she possibly want? A vision of dark eyes and strong hands, of a voice saying, "You are brave," with absolute sincerity. "Ezra," Anna said slowly, "you are a wonderful man and your daughters are delightful, but I need more time. This is a permanent decision, and I want to be certain I am making it for the right reasons." Disappointment flickered across Ezra's face, but he nodded. "Of course. I do not want to rush you. Take all the time you need." But Anna could see she had hurt him, and the guilt was heavy. He had paid for her passage west, had welcomed her into his home and his life. The least she owed him was an honest answer, not this painful uncertainty. That night, lying in her narrow bed at the boarding house, Anna admitted the truth to herself. She was not in love with Ezra Whitfield. She might learn to love him over time, might build affection from companionship and shared purpose. But her heart had already been given, without her permission or intention, to a tall cowboy with sad eyes who had ridden through a blizzard to save her life. The realization did not help. Benjamin had never indicated any special interest beyond the concern of one human being for another. He had rescued her and returned her to Ezra, fulfilling his neighborly duty. The fact that she had developed feelings for him was her problem alone. Anna threw herself into useful activity, helping at Ezra's store and spending time with Sarah and Emma. The girls were slowly warming to her, especially Emma, who had begun to shyly hold Anna's hand when they walked to school. Anna told herself this was enough, that building a family with these children and their father was a worthy purpose. Then 3 weeks after her arrival in Evanston, Benjamin rode into town with a string of newly broken horses to sell, and everything fell apart. Anna was in the store alone, Ezra having gone to the bank when Benjamin walked in. He stopped short when he saw her, surprise evident on his face. "Miss Harrington," he said, removing his hat, "I did not expect to see you here." "I have been helping Ezra with the store," Anna said, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. "What can I get for you?" Benjamin rattled off a list of supplies he needed, and Anna moved efficiently to gather them, acutely aware of his presence in the small space. They had not spoken directly since the night of her rescue, though she had thought about him constantly. "How have you been?" Benjamin asked as she measured out nails. "You have recovered from your ordeal completely," Anna assured him. "Thanks to your timely intervention. How is your ranch and Rust?" "Rust is fine. Spoiled, actually, since I gave him extra grain for a week after that journey. The ranch is good. Quieter than I would like, honestly." Anna glanced up at him, catching something wistful in his voice. "You live alone?" "Just me and a hired hand who comes in during calving season," Benjamin confirmed. "It is peaceful, but sometimes too peaceful." Their eyes met, and the air between them suddenly felt charged with something Anna could not name but definitely felt. Benjamin took a step closer, and Anna's breath caught. Anna, he started, then stopped, shook his head. Miss Harrington, I should not. Should not what? Anna asked quietly. Should not tell you that I have not stopped thinking about you since I left you here that night. Should not admit that I ride into town more often than I need to, hoping to catch a glimpse of you. Should not confess that the thought of you marrying Ezra makes me feel like I am losing something precious before I ever really had it. Anna set down the box of nails with shaking hands. Benjamin, you are spoken for, Benjamin continued, his voice rough. Ezra is my friend and neighbor. You came west to marry him. I have no right to feel this way, and I certainly have no right to tell you about it. But I am a coward, and I cannot let you marry him without you knowing that someone else cares for you, that I care for you. I have not agreed to marry him, Anna said, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. He proposed 2 weeks ago, and I said I needed time. Hope flared in Benjamin's eyes, followed quickly by caution. Why? Because I do not love him, Anna admitted. Because every time I think about saying yes, I see your face. Because you rode through a blizzard for me, and no one has ever done anything like that for me before. Because when I am with you, I feel more myself than I have in years. Benjamin closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He cupped her face in his hands, his calloused palms rough against her cheeks, and looked at her with such intensity that Anna felt it in her bones. I am not a wealthy man, he said. I cannot offer you the security Ezra can. The ranch is small and the work is hard. Wyoming winters are brutal and summers are not much better, but I would spend every day trying to make you happy. I would ride through 1,000 blizzards for you. I would build you the life you deserve, whatever that takes. I do not need wealth, Anna said, reaching up to cover his hands with hers. I need someone who sees me, who values me for who I am, not what I represent or what I can do for them. I think you might be that person. Benjamin smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something breathtaking. I know you are that person for me. He kissed her, and Anna felt the entire world narrow down to the warmth of his mouth on hers, the strength of his arms as they wrapped around her, the rightness of this moment that she had not known she was waiting for. They broke apart when they heard voices approaching outside. Benjamin stepped back reluctantly, his eyes never leaving her face. I need to speak with Ezra, Anna said. This is not fair to him. I will speak with him first, Benjamin said. Man to man, you should not have to do this alone. We will do it together, Anna decided. He deserves the truth from both of us. Ezra took the news better than Anna had feared, but worse than she had hoped. He was hurt, that much was clear, but he was also understanding in a way that made Anna feel even more guilty. They met at his home that evening, Anna and Benjamin side by side on the settee, while Ezra listened to their explanation with a carefully neutral expression. I am sorry, Ezra, Anna said when she had finished. I did not come west intending for this to happen. I genuinely believed I could build a life with you, but I cannot marry you feeling the way I do about Benjamin. It would not be fair to anyone, least of all your daughters. Ezra was silent for a long moment, then sighed. I will not pretend this does not hurt. I had hoped we could make a family together, but you are right that entering a marriage without love would be a mistake, particularly a second marriage for me. My girls deserve better than a stepmother who wishes she was somewhere else. I am truly sorry, Anna repeated. I know, Ezra said. And honestly, I am not entirely surprised. I saw the way you looked at each other that first night. I told myself I was imagining it, but I think I knew even then. He turned to Benjamin. You will take care of her, with my life, Benjamin said without hesitation. Then I suppose I have to wish you both well, Ezra said. Though I will need time before I can be happy about it. They left shortly after, walking through the cold evening toward the boarding house. Anna felt lighter than she had in weeks, despite the guilt about Ezra. "Are you certain?" Benjamin asked as they stopped outside the boarding house door. "I meant what I said about the ranch. Life there is not easy." "I am certain," Anna said firmly. "I did not come west for easy. I came west for a chance to build something real. I think I can do that with you." "Then marry me," Benjamin said. "Properly, with a real proposal." Anna laughed. "You just told me that in the store." "That was a confession, not a proposal," Benjamin said, dropping to one knee right there in the street, heedless of the snow soaking through his pants. "Anna Harrington, you are the bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met. You kept yourself alive through 3 days in a blizzard with nothing but determination and hardtack. You left everything you knew behind to start fresh in a harsh land. You have a strength in you that most people never find. I fell for you the moment I walked into that cabin and saw you sitting by the fire, half frozen but still fighting. Marry me. Build a life with me. Let me spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of you." Anna pulled him to his feet, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, you foolish man. Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the church in Evanston. Anna wore her best dress and Benjamin bought a new shirt for the occasion. The entire town turned out, curious about the mail-order bride who had chosen the cowboy over the prosperous merchant. Even Ezra came, though he left immediately after the ceremony, his expression carefully composed. Anna moved to Benjamin's ranch the same afternoon, riding beside him on Rust with her trunk secured behind the saddle, just as it had been on their first journey together. The ranch was small, as Benjamin had warned, just a simple 2-room cabin and a barn. But it was clean and well-maintained, and Anna could see the potential in it. "I will build you a proper house," Benjamin promised as he helped her down from the horse. "A bigger cabin with a bedroom and a real kitchen." "This is perfect," Anna said and meant it. The cabin might be small, but it was theirs, built by the labor of the man she loved. That made it more valuable than any mansion in Boston. That first night as his wife, Anna lay in Benjamin's arms in the narrow bed and felt completely at peace for the first time in years. The wind howled outside, promising another storm, but inside they were warm and safe. "You regret it?" Benjamin asked quietly, "choosing this over what Ezra could have given you?" "Never," Anna said firmly. "I regret nothing." The winter was indeed harsh, as Benjamin had warned. There were days when the snow piled so high they could not get the cabin door open, when the wind shrieked like something alive trying to get in. Anna learned to help with the ranch work, feeding cattle in sub-zero temperatures and breaking ice in water troughs. Her hands grew calloused, her back grew strong, and she discovered reserves of endurance she had not known she possessed. But there were also nights by the fire, Benjamin teaching her to play cards while snow fell outside. There were mornings waking wrapped in his arms, feeling safer and more content than she had ever felt in her privileged Boston life. There were conversations that lasted hours, learning everything about each other, building the foundation of true partnership. Spring came eventually, as it always does, and with it came new challenges and new joys. Anna planted a garden and was absurdly proud when the first shoots pushed through the soil. Benjamin broke a particularly difficult mare, and Anna was there to see the moment the horse finally accepted his hand. They worked side by side to repair the barn roof damaged by winter storms, and Anna laughed at Benjamin's surprise when she proved adept with a hammer. "You are full of surprises," he said, watching her secure a shingle with efficient movements. "Did you think I would be useless just because I came from the city?" Anna teased. "I thought you would be remarkable," Benjamin corrected. "You have exceeded even that expectation." Summer brought the hardest work of the year, but also long evenings when they could sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Anna learned to love the vast Wyoming sky, the way distance and space felt less like isolation and more like freedom. In August, Anna realized she was pregnant. She told Benjamin one evening as they sat by the creek that ran through their property, watching the water dance over the rocks. "I am going to have a baby," she said quietly, and felt his entire body go still beside her. Then he was turning to her, his eyes bright with emotion. "Truly, truly," Anna confirmed. "Sometime in late winter, I think." Benjamin pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. When he finally pulled back, she saw tears on his cheeks. "I never thought I would have this," he said roughly. "A family of my own. I had resigned myself to being alone." "You are not alone," Anna said, wiping away his tears with her thumbs. "You will never be alone again." The pregnancy was difficult at times, particularly as winter approached again, and Anna found herself exhausted more easily. But Benjamin was attentive and patient, taking on extra work without complaint and making sure she rested when she needed to. "I feel useless," Anna complained one afternoon in December, frustrated by her inability to do the physical labor that had become second nature. "You are growing our child," Benjamin said firmly. "That is the most important work there is." The baby came on a frigid night in February, in the middle of a snowstorm that reminded Anna vividly of the blizzard that had first brought them together. The midwife from town had come to stay with them a week earlier, anticipating the birth, and her presence was the only thing that kept Benjamin from completely panicking. Anna labored through the night while the wind howled and snow piled against the cabin walls. The pain was worse than anything she had imagined, but every time she felt like she could not continue, she looked at Benjamin's face and found the strength to keep going. Their son was born just as dawn broke, his first cries competing with the wind outside. Benjamin held him with shaking hands, his expression one of pure awe. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Anna, he is perfect." They named him William after Benjamin's brother so that the name would live on even though the man was gone. Little William had his father's dark hair and his mother's stubborn determination, evident even in infancy when he refused to sleep unless someone was holding him. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. The ranch slowly expanded as Benjamin's reputation as a horse trainer grew. They added on to the cabin, building a proper bedroom and a larger kitchen. Anna's garden flourished, and she began selling preserves in town. William grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's quiet nature and his mother's quick mind. 2 years after William's birth, Anna had a daughter they named Catherine. She was easier than her brother had been, a placid baby who slept through the night almost immediately. 2 years after that came another son, James, who was as wild and energetic as his sister was calm. Life was full and busy, sometimes overwhelmingly so. There were years when the cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were winters that seemed endless and summers when drought threatened everything. There were illnesses and injuries, near disasters and actual disasters. But through it all, Anna and Benjamin remained the core of each other's world. They had built something real and lasting, a partnership based on love and respect and shared purpose. Anna never regretted her choice to follow her heart instead of her original plan. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin surprised her with a gift. They rode out to a spot on their land that overlooked the valley, and Anna saw that he had built a small bench there, positioned to catch the sunset. "I wanted to make you something that would last," Benjamin explained. "So that years from now, when we are old and gray, we can sit here and remember everything we have built together." Anna traced the carved letters on the bench back, BQ and AQ, forever. It is perfect. They sat together as the sun set, their hands intertwined, and Anna thought about the girl who had stepped off that stage coach into a blizzard, scared and uncertain about her future. She could never have imagined this life, this love, this profound sense of belonging. "What are you thinking?" Benjamin asked, squeezing her hand. "That getting stranded in that snowstorm was the best thing that ever happened to me," Anna said, "because it brought you riding through the storm to find me." "I will always come for you," Benjamin said seriously, "through any storm, any distance." "That is a promise." "I know," Anna said, "and I will always be here waiting, building our life, raising our children, loving you. That is my promise." They sat and watched the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. The Wyoming wilderness spread out before them in all its harsh and beautiful glory. In the distance, they could see the lights beginning to glow in Amidst, the town that had become their home. Closer, they could see their cabin, smoke rising from the chimney, their children safe inside with the neighbor woman who was watching them for the evening. It was not the life Anna had planned when she had answered that mail-order bride advertisement. It was infinitely better. Years continued to pass, each one adding its own stories and challenges to their shared history. William grew into a serious young man who loved working with the horses as much as his father did. Catherine became the family's peacemaker, always finding diplomatic solutions when tempers flared. James was the wild one, constantly getting into scrapes and adventures that aged his parents prematurely. When William was 15, he asked his parents how they had met. The family was gathered around the dinner table, a rare moment when all 5 of them were present and not occupied with the endless work of the ranch. "Your mother answered an advertisement to marry a different man," Benjamin said with a small smile, "but I stole her away." "You did not steal me," Anna protested, laughing. "You rescued me from a blizzard and I fell in love with you." "There was a blizzard?" Catherine asked, her eyes wide. So Anna and Benjamin told the story together, trading details back and forth. They told about the stagecoach that could not continue, the desperate walk to the cabin, the 3 days of isolation. They told about Benjamin's decision to ride through the storm, the difficult journey to find her, and the slow ride back to Amidst. "What about the other man?" William asked. "The one you were supposed to marry, Ezra Whitfield," Anna said. "He was a good man, kind and decent, but I did not love him the way a wife should love her husband. He deserved someone who could give him her whole heart," Benjamin added, "not someone whose heart had already been claimed." "Did he ever marry again?" James asked. "He did," Anna confirmed. 3 years after Benjamin and I married, he met a widow from Rock Springs. They have been very happy together. His daughters got the mother they deserved, and Ezra got the wife he deserved. Everything worked out as it should. "That is the most romantic story I have ever heard," Catherine declared. "It is our story," Benjamin said, reaching across the table to take Anna's hand. "And I would not change a single moment of it." As the children grew and eventually began leaving to start their own lives, Anna and Benjamin found themselves coming full circle, once again just the 2 of them in the cabin. William took over more and more of the ranch work, eventually building his own house on the property when he married a girl from town. Catherine married a teacher and moved to Cheyenne, though she visited often. James, true to his wild nature, headed further west to try his hand at gold prospecting in California. Anna and Benjamin grew older, their hair turning gray, their movements slower but still capable. The ranch had prospered over the years, and they now had hired hands to help with the heaviest work. But they still rose each morning and worked alongside their workers, unable to fully set aside the habits of a lifetime. On a winter evening 23 years after their marriage, another blizzard hit Amidst. Anna stood at the window, watching the snow fall in thick curtains that obscured everything beyond the porch, and felt Benjamin come to stand behind her. "Remember the first storm?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "How could I forget?" Anna leaned back against him. "I was so frightened, so certain I would die alone in that cabin. And then I came crashing in, half frozen and completely captivated by the beautiful woman who had survived on hardtack and determination." "You were captivated then?" Anna turned in his arms to look up at him. "You never said." "I was terrified to say anything," Benjamin admitted. "You were spoken for, and I thought I had no right to feel what I was feeling. But the moment I saw you, Anna, I knew. I knew you were meant to be mine." "I am yours," Anna said softly. "I have been yours since that night, and I will be yours until my last breath." They stood together watching the storm, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life worth living. The wind howled and the snow fell, but inside they were warm and safe, just as they had been in that small cabin all those years ago. As they grew older still, into their 50s and 60s, Anna and Benjamin became pillars of the Amidst community. They were the couple people pointed to as an example of what love could be. The story they told to prove that happy endings existed even in the harsh realities of frontier life. Benjamin taught his skills to young men hoping to become horse trainers, passing on knowledge he had accumulated over decades. Anna became known for her wisdom and kindness, the person people came to when they needed advice or simply someone to listen. Their grandchildren began to arrive, William's children first, then Catherine's. Each time a new baby was placed in their arms, Anna and Benjamin marveled at the legacy they had created, the family that had grown from a chance meeting in a blizzard. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the expanded cabin and spilled out onto the porch. There was food and music, laughter and stories. At the height of the celebration, William called for quiet and presented his parents with a gift. It was a painting, commissioned from an artist in Cheyenne. It depicted a winter landscape, a small cabin barely visible through falling snow, and in the foreground, a man on horseback, clearly riding toward the cabin with determined purpose. "So we never forget how this all began," William said, as Anna wiped tears from her eyes. "As if we could forget," Anna managed to say. "Every day I wake up grateful for that storm, for your father's courage, for everything that brought us to this moment." Benjamin pulled her close, unconcerned about their audience, and kissed her with the same passion he had shown 40 years ago in Ezra's store. The family erupted in cheers and applause. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Anna and Benjamin walked out to the bench overlooking the valley. They moved slower now, their joints stiff with age, but they still made the journey regularly. 40 years, Anna said, settling onto the bench beside her husband. "Longer than I lived before I met you." "Best 40 years of my life," Benjamin said. "Every single day with you has been a gift. Even the hard days," Anna teased. "Even when the cattle got out and we spent 12 hours rounding them up in the rain. Even when James broke his arm and we thought it was much worse. Even when money was so tight we were not sure we would make it through winter. Especially those days," Benjamin said seriously, "because we faced them together. Because you were beside me, making everything bearable, making everything better." Anna rested her head on his shoulder, looking out at the land they had worked for 4 decades. "I love you, Benjamin Quincy. I loved you when I first saw you standing outside that cabin, though I did not know it yet. I love you now, with gray in your hair and wrinkles around your eyes. I will love you forever." "And I love you, Anna Quincy," Benjamin replied. "My mail-order bride who was never truly mine to order, who chose me of her own free will and made my life complete." They sat together in the peaceful evening, wrapped in blankets against the cold, and watched the stars emerge one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. In the distance, a wolf howled, and closer, an owl called to its mate, the sounds of the wilderness they had called home for so long. Life continued, seasons turning, years passing. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Benjamin was 76, Anna 73, both still sharp-minded though their bodies had begun to fail them. "We have done well," Benjamin said one evening as they sat by the fire in their cabin, the same fireplace where Anna had first warmed herself after being stranded. "Built a good life, raised good children." "We have," Anna agreed. "No regrets. Only that we did not have more time," Benjamin said. 100 years would not be enough with you." Anna squeezed his hand, knowing what he meant. They had both been feeling the weight of their years more keenly lately, understanding without saying it directly that their time was growing shorter. But they had time still, time to watch their family grow, time to sit together in comfortable silence, time to marvel at the life they had built from a chance meeting in a snowstorm. Benjamin passed first, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. Anna held his hand as he took his last breath, and though her heart broke, she felt grateful that he had gone gently, without pain or fear. She lived 3 more years without him, years that felt both endless and fleeting. She stayed in the cabin they had shared, refusing all offers to move in with children or grandchildren. William lived close enough to check on her daily, and Catherine visited every month. James came back from California when he heard his father had passed and stayed for 6 months before his wanderlust called him away again. Anna spent those final years writing down their story, every detail she could remember from that first storm to Benjamin's last day. She wanted her descendants to know the truth of what she and Benjamin had built, the love that had sustained them through hardship and joy alike. On a cold February night, 53 years after Benjamin had ridden through a blizzard to find her, Anna closed her eyes and did not open them again. She was found the next morning by William, lying peacefully in the bed she had shared with Benjamin, her journal open on the nightstand beside her. They buried her beside Benjamin on the hill overlooking the ranch, the place where he had built the bench carved with their initials. At the funeral, attended by what seemed like half of Wyoming, William read from his mother's journal, the story of 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds and built a love that had lasted a lifetime. "My father once told me that he would ride through any storm to find my mother," William said, his voice strong despite his grief. And he did, not just once but every day of their marriage. Every challenge they faced, every hardship, he rode through it with her, and she did the same for him. That is what love is, not the easy moments but the willingness to ride through storms together. The ranch stayed in the Quincy family for generations. The cabin where Anna had first sheltered was preserved and eventually became a local landmark, the place where one of Evanston's most beloved love stories had begun. The bench overlooking the valley became a popular spot for proposals, young couples seeking the same lasting love that Benjamin and Anna had found. Years turned into decades, decades into a century. The world changed around Evanston, Wyoming. The Wild West became the Old West, then simply history. But the story persisted, passed down through the Quincy family and retold in the town, embellished slightly with each telling but never losing its essential truth. A woman had been stranded in a blizzard, alone and frightened, her future uncertain. A man had ridden through the storm to find her, not knowing that he was riding toward his own destiny. They had fallen in love, built a life together, and created a legacy that lasted far beyond their own years. It was a simple story in many ways. No grand adventures, no dramatic rescues beyond that first one, no wealth or fame. Just two people who had chosen each other and committed to that choice every single day for more than 50 years. But sometimes the simple stories are the ones worth telling, the ones that endure because they speak to something fundamental about human nature. The need to be seen, to be valued, to find that one person who makes everything else make sense. Anna Harrington had traveled west looking for a fresh start, for escape from a past that had defined her in ways she hated. She had found so much more. She had found herself, found her strength, found her purpose. And most importantly, she had found Benjamin Quincy, the man who would ride through any storm for her. That was worth more than all the security and respectability in the world. That was worth everything. The painting William had commissioned for their 40th anniversary hung in the main house of the Quincy Ranch for 5 generations, carefully preserved and restored when needed. It depicted that first rescue, the man on horseback riding toward the barely visible cabin, determination evident in every line of the scene. But the real story was not captured in that painting, could not be captured in any single image. The real story was in the decades that followed, the quiet moments and the dramatic ones, the love that grew deeper with each passing year, the partnership that sustained them both through everything life could throw at them. In the end, Anna and Benjamin's story was simply this. 2 people met in a blizzard. One needed rescuing. The other needed purpose. Together, they found everything they had been missing, and they held onto it with both hands, refusing to let go even when life tried to pry their fingers loose. They had loved fiercely and completely, without reservation or regret. They had built a family, a legacy, a life worth living. They had proven that love could survive and even thrive in the harshest conditions, that 2 people committed to each other could weather any storm. And on cold winter nights, when the wind howled and the snow fell thick over Evanston, Wyoming, old-timers would tell the story of Benjamin and Anna Quincy, the cowboy and his mail-order bride, the couple who had shown everyone what true love looked like. It was a story that had begun with a desperate ride through a blizzard, and a woman who refused to give up hope even when all seemed lost. It was a story that had lasted a lifetime and beyond, touching everyone who heard it, reminding them that sometimes the best things in life come from the unexpected, from the storms that force us off our planned paths and onto the ones we were always meant to follow. Anna had come west to marry a stranger and found her soulmate instead. Benjamin had ridden out to rescue a woman and found his reason for living. Together, they had created something beautiful and enduring, a love story for the ages, and that, in the end, was everything.